Welcome back to Reddit Talks. Our team carefully creates and hand edits every story to help improve your mindset through storytelling. All of our content is 100% original and human-led. Enjoy the video.
My son flew to the coast with his wife and her mother, leaving me to work the farm. The next day he panicked. "Dad, our cards don't work," I replied with something no one expected. When the bank called to confirm the $75,000 wire transfer my son was attempting to make from my account, I was standing in the north pasture with my hands buried in soil that 3 generations of my family had worked. The woman on the phone said the words unauthorized access and fraudulent activity, and I just stood there, dirt caking under my fingernails, watching the sun burn orange over land that suddenly felt like the only honest thing left in my life. My name is Walter Brennan. I'm 71 years old, and for the past 53 years I've been the backbone of this family's survival. I was 18 when my father died in a tractor accident, leaving me with 2 younger siblings, a failing farm, and debts that could have buried us 3 times over. I didn't go to college. I didn't travel. I didn't marry until I was 35 because I couldn't afford to feed another mouth. I worked 18-hour days, every day, turning a dying operation into something that could sustain us all. The Brennan family farm became profitable, not wealthy, but stable. We raised cattle, grew corn and soybeans, had contracts with 3 different suppliers. When my wife Elena died of cancer 12 years ago, I kept going because that's what Brennans do. We endure. My son Marcus grew up watching me work myself to the bone. I sent him to college, paid every penny. He came back with a business degree and a wife named Vivian who wore designer sunglasses to Sunday dinner and complained about the smell of manure like it was a personal insult. 3 months ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I signed over power of attorney. Marcus had brought it up casually over breakfast, Vivian sitting beside him with that practiced smile she used when she wanted something. "Dad, you're getting older. What if something happens? What if you have a stroke or fall? Someone needs to be able to make decisions, handle the accounts, keep things running." It made sense, or it seemed to. I signed the papers Marcus's lawyer friend drew up. Some kid named Trevor who did real estate closings and probably didn't know the difference between a power of attorney and a living will. I signed because Marcus was my son, and I trusted him the way fathers are supposed to trust their children. Big mistake. Last week, Marcus announced they were taking a vacation. Him, Vivian, and Vivian's mother, Lorraine. A woman who looked at me like I was a hired hand instead of the man who owned the property her daughter was spending my money to vacation on. "Just a week, Dad," Marcus said, loading designer luggage into his BMW. "The coast. Vivian needs a break from the stress." Stress? She didn't work. She spent her days posting photos of organic smoothies on Instagram and complaining about the Wi-Fi signal. "Who's going to help with the farm?" I asked. "You'll be fine for a week," Vivian said, not even looking at me. "It's not like you need us here to water some plants." Some plants. 40 acres of crops, 60 head of cattle, irrigation systems, feed schedules, equipment maintenance. But I didn't argue. I just watched them drive away, leaving me standing in the driveway with a list of tasks long enough to break a man half my age. That night, the phone rang at 9:47 p.m. "Mr. Brennan, this is Carla Vasquez from First National Bank. We need to verify some unusual account activity." My stomach dropped before she even finished the sentence. "What kind of activity?" "Your son, Marcus Brennan, attempted to initiate a wire transfer of $75,000 this morning. He also submitted paperwork to add himself as a primary account holder with full withdrawal privileges. Since you're the original account owner, we're required to confirm these transactions with you directly. $75,000. That was the money from selling last season's cattle. Money earmarked for new equipment, property taxes, and the irrigation system that was on its last legs. I didn't authorize any of that," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Then we'll freeze the account immediately and flag the attempted transactions as fraudulent. Mr. Brennan, I recommend you come to the branch tomorrow morning. We need to discuss some concerning patterns we've noticed over the past 6 months." Patterns. I hung up and sat in the kitchen, where Elena and I had shared 50 years of meals, where I'd taught Marcus to tie his shoes, where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays and all the small moments that make up a life, and I understood, with perfect clarity, that my son had been robbing me. Chapter 2. The paper trail. I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with every bank statement I could find, spreading them out like evidence at a crime scene. At 6 a.m. I drove to town. First National opened at 8 tile, but I was there at 7:45, waiting in the parking lot, watching the sun come up over buildings that had stood since Elena and I were young. Carla Vasquez was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen every scam in the book. She led me into a private office and closed the door. "Mr. Brennan, I'm going to be direct with you. Your son has been systematically draining your accounts for 8 months. She turned her computer screen toward me. Monthly transfers, $2,500 here, $3,800 there, always categorized as farm operating expenses or equipment maintenance. But I knew every expense on that farm. I tracked every dollar. "These withdrawals," Carla said, pointing to the screen, "total $47,300. There are also 3 separate loan applications using your farm as collateral. We denied them because they required your physical signature, but the attempts are concerning. He tried to take out loans against my property, $150,000 worth. When we told him we needed you to come in, he claimed you were having memory issues and suggested we work with him directly as your legal representative. Memory issues. My hand started shaking. There's more, Carla continued. 2 months ago, he came in with documents claiming to transfer the farm's deed into a family trust with him as the primary trustee. Our legal department flagged it because the notarization looked questionable. She handed me a copy. The signature at the bottom was supposed to be mine. It wasn't even close. That's forgery, I said. Yes, Mr. Brennan, that's exactly what it is. I sat there, looking at my son's attempt to erase me from my own life, and something cold and final settled in my chest. What do I do? First, we revoke every authorization he has. Second, you file a police report. Third, you get a lawyer. A real one, not your son's friend. We spent the next 2 hours dismantling Marcus's access to my life. New account numbers, new passwords, alerts on every transaction, a formal letter revoking the power of attorney. When I left the bank, I had a folder 3 inches thick documenting my son's theft. I should have gone to the police right then, but I needed one more piece of the puzzle. I needed to know why. Chapter 3. The recording Gerald Hutchins had been my neighbor for 42 years. His property bordered mine to the east, and we'd shared equipment, labor, and countless evenings on his porch, drinking whiskey and solving the world's problems. I drove to his place that afternoon and found him working on his tractor. "Walt," he said, wiping grease from his hands, "you look like hell. I need a favor, Gerald, and I need you to not ask questions until I'm ready to answer them." He studied my face for a long moment. "What do you need?" "I need to borrow your trail camera, the one with the audio recorder." Gerald had installed wildlife cameras all over his property to monitor deer. They were motion activated, high resolution, and they recorded sound. "You spying on poachers?" Something like that. He handed me the camera without another word. That night, I installed it in my own kitchen. I positioned it on top of the refrigerator, angled down at the table where I knew Marcus and Vivian would sit when they came back. The camera was small, black, and completely invisible if you didn't know to look for it. Then I waited. They returned 4 days later, their vacation cut short by the fact that none of their credit cards worked. I'd canceled the supplementary cards I'd given them years ago, cards they'd been using to fund their lifestyle while I ate canned soup and wore boots with holes in them. The BMW pulled into the driveway at 3:30 p.m. Marcus got out first, his face red with frustration. Vivian followed, her designer sunglasses unable to hide her fury. Lorraine stayed in the car, probably calling her country club friends to complain. "Dad!" Marcus shouted, storming up the porch steps. "What the hell did you do to our cards?" I was sitting in my rocking chair, the same chair my father had built in 1952. I didn't stand up. "I canceled them. You can't just cancel our cards. We were stranded at the hotel." "Do you know how humiliating that was? Were they your cards, Marcus? Or were they mine?" Vivian stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Walter, this is ridiculous. We're family. We share resources." "Share," I repeated. "Is that what you call taking $75,000 without asking?" Marcus's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about. The bank called. They told me about the wire transfer. They told me about everything." For a moment, nobody spoke. The only sound was Lorraine getting out of the car, her heels clicking on the gravel. "We need to talk inside," Marcus finally said. "Yes," I agreed. "We do." We sat at the kitchen table. Marcus, Vivian, and Lorraine on one side, me on the other. The camera on top of the fridge recorded everything. "Dad, I can explain," Marcus started. "Explain what? The theft? The forgery? The loan applications?" "It's not theft. I have power of attorney. That money is technically accessible to me, for my benefit, not yours." Vivian leaned forward, her voice suddenly soft, manipulative. "Walter, we were trying to protect you. You're getting older. The farm is too much for one person. We were making plans to sell it to get you into a nice retirement community. Without telling me?" "Because we knew you'd say no," Lorraine interjected. "You're too stubborn to see what's best for yourself." There it was, the truth hiding beneath all the lies. "And what happens to the money from selling my farm?" I asked. Marcus hesitated. Vivian answered for him. "We'd use it to take care of you, to make sure you're comfortable." "How much does comfort cost, Vivian? How much were you planning to keep for yourselves?" She didn't answer. I pulled out the bank statements and slid them across the table. 8 months of withdrawals, $47,300. What was that for? My comfort? "Farm expenses," Marcus said weakly. "Bullshit. I know every expense on this farm. Show me receipts." He couldn't. Of course he couldn't. "And these loan applications?" I pushed the papers toward him. "What were you going to do with $150,000? "We have debts," Vivian said. "Credit cards, the car payment, my mother's medical bills. Your mother is sitting right there looking healthy as a horse." Lorraine's face flushed red. "Walter, you don't understand what it's like to try to maintain a certain lifestyle on someone else's money." "You're right. I don't understand that." Marcus stood up abruptly. "Dad, you're being unreasonable. We're family. Everything we did was to help you." "Then explain the forged signature on the deed transfer." The color drained from his face. Don't lie to me, Marcus. The bank has the document. Your handwriting expert flagged it. You tried to steal my farm." Vivian's mask finally cracked. "This farm should be ours. You're 71 years old. What are you going to do with it? You don't even have anyone anyone to leave it to except us. We were just speeding up the inevitable. The inevitable, I repeated softly. You mean my death? That's not what she meant, Marcus said quickly. Isn't it? Because it sounds like you were just waiting for me to die so you could cash out. But I wasn't dying fast enough, so you decided to take it while I was still breathing. Lorraine stood up. We don't have to listen to this. Come on, Vivian. Marcus, let's go. Yes, I said. Leave, and don't come back. Marcus looked at me, something like desperation in his eyes. Dad, please. We can fix this. How? By giving back the money you stole? By apologizing for trying to forge my signature? By admitting you were planning to throw me in a home and sell everything I built? I never said, you didn't have to say it, son. You showed me. They left. The BMW kicked up dust as it disappeared down the road. I sat alone at the kitchen table and played back the recording. Every word, every admission, every moment of their masks slipping. Then I called the police. Chapter 4. The Detective Raymond Porter was 58 years old, built like a linebacker, with 26 years on the force and the kind of weathered face that came from seeing humanity at its worst. He arrived the next morning with a younger officer, a woman named Officer Janet Reyes, who handled financial crimes. I made coffee. We sat at the kitchen table and I laid out everything. The bank statements, the forged documents, the power of attorney abuse, the recording. Detective Porter listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. Mr. Brennan, what you're describing is multiple felonies. Elder financial abuse, forgery, attempted fraud, potentially identity theft. I know. And you want to press charges? I thought about Marcus learning to drive in the old Ford pickup. I thought about teaching him to fish in the creek behind the barn. I thought about 50 years of being his father. Then I thought about Vivian's voice. We were just speeding up the inevitable. Yes, I said. I want to press charges. Officer Reyes took the documents. We'll need to verify everything with the bank. We'll also need forensic analysis of the forged signature. I have a recording, I said, and played it for them. They listened to the entire conversation. When Vivian's voice said, "This farm should be ours," Officer Reyes met my eyes. "This is damning evidence, Mr. Brennan. With your permission, we'd like to obtain a warrant to search their residence and seize their financial records." Do it. 2 days later, the police executed a search warrant on Marcus and Vivian's house, a McMansion in a gated community 30 miles away, a house I'd never been invited to despite having paid for Marcus's education and loaned him money for the down payment he never repaid. They found everything. Spreadsheets detailing how they planned to divide the farm sale proceeds. Email chains with real estate developers interested in buying my land for a housing development. Text messages between Vivian and Lorraine discussing which retirement home was cheap enough to stick me in. And they found something else. A life insurance policy on me. $500,000. Taken out 8 months ago with Marcus as the sole beneficiary. When Detective Porter told me about the policy, I felt something break inside my chest. They were betting on me dying, I said. Or they were planning to help it along, Porter said quietly. Mr. Brennan, we need to ask you something. Have you experienced any unexplained health issues in the past few months? Dizziness? Nausea? Confusion? I thought back. 3 months ago, I'd had a spell of vertigo so bad I'd nearly fallen off a ladder. The doctor said it was probably my blood pressure, told me to reduce stress. 2 months ago, I'd been sick for a week with what I thought was food poisoning. 6 weeks ago, I'd felt disoriented and confused, forgot where I'd parked the truck in town. Yeah, I said slowly, a few times. Were you alone when these episodes happened? No, Marcus was there. He's the one who took me to the doctor. Porter and Reyes exchanged a look. Mr. Brennan, we'd like you to get a full toxicology screening. Today, Chapter 5, the test results. Dr. Ramesh Patel was my physician, a careful man who'd been treating me for 15 years. When he called me into his office 3 days after the blood work, his face was grave. Walter, your screening came back positive for several concerning substances. What kind of substances? Benzodiazepines, specifically diazepam. That's Valium. Also trace amounts of diphenhydramine, which is Benadryl, both in concentrations suggesting regular exposure over several months. My mouth went dry. I don't take either of those medications. I know. That's why I called Detective Porter. These substances don't appear naturally. Someone was putting them in your food or drink. The room seemed to tilt. The symptoms you described, vertigo, nausea, confusion, are consistent with benzodiazepine poisoning. In an elderly person, especially someone working physically demanding jobs, this could easily lead to a fatal accident. They were drugging me. Not enough to kill me outright, but enough to make me weak, confused, vulnerable. Enough to make an accident look plausible. Detective Porter arrested Marcus and Vivian that afternoon. The charges were extensive. Elder abuse, financial exploitation, forgery, fraud, conspiracy to commit murder. Lorraine was arrested as an accessory. The text messages showed she'd known about everything. Chapter 6, the trial. The trial took 9 months. 9 months of lawyers, depositions, and watching my son sit in a courtroom looking like the victim instead of the criminal. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Monica Chen, a woman in her 40s who'd built her reputation on protecting vulnerable adults from family predators. The evidence was overwhelming. The bank statements, the forged documents, the recording, the toxicology reports, the life insurance policy, the emails planning the farm's sale. Marcus's lawyer tried to spin it, claimed the power of attorney gave Marcus legal authority, that the medications were prescribed by a doctor Marcus couldn't name, that the insurance policy was standard estate planning. It didn't work. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Marcus was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Vivian got 8. Lorraine got 3 years probation and a $50,000 fine. When the judge read the sentence, Marcus looked at me from across the courtroom. He didn't look angry. He looked empty. I felt nothing.